Happy politics and welcome to the last BC Poly Hot Stove of January, I think. I should have looked at the calendar before coming up with that intro. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Orca, and I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
It's Jordan Bateman, VP Communications for the Independent Contractors and Business Association, and I can confirm this is it for January.
And no special bonus Twitter Spaces this week, unless something really amazing happens, but it doesn't look likely right now. Jordan, this is it's always a busy time in BC politics. I would submit that next month will be even busier, but there's still lots to talk about. Now, there's a couple things we talked about in the text exchange beforehand, some of the things we wanted to talk about. And I want to tease you with something that's going to come out on the Orca later today. In fact, probably before this piece goes goes live on the site. A Rob Shaw piece, which is excellent. It's talking about FOI. Now, yes, the horse is out of the barn. The cart is ahead of the horse. Pick your metaphor. That law is not going to get changed. But the legislative committee that is set up to consult with the public and stakeholders, they're still going to go forward with, it's going to be a charade, Jordan. It's going to be an absolute charade. I encourage everyone to read Rob's piece on the Orca, which will be live probably before you hear this. Man, the MLAs sitting in the committee, they all know that this is just going through the motions.
This is really mind-boggling to me because if I recall correctly, the legislation had to include a provision to allow them to skip the committee process, essentially. That was really the way this was supposed to go. ICBA, full disclosure, we're one of the financial partners who helped the BC Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. But don't think this is just a free enterprise issue. This, we were partnering with everyone from civil liberties, CCPA, all across the political spectrum. This was a rare, universally despised policy that the NDP brought in. And now we've seen it spread to other municipalities. Surrey's now instituted a $10 application fee for their FOIs, just like everyone predicted it would. But man, what an absolute farce this is, to have a committee sitting there pretending to be consulting on the act that their government, the NDP government, just gutted mere minutes ago. Unbelievable. Again, another just anti-democratic, anti-public interest, anti-taxpayer, anti-citizen, whatever you want to say. This is horrible policy, and the NDP just seem willing to compound it. It still boggles my mind that they went through with it. Again, very few policies in BC that virtually everyone across the political spectrum chastises. This was one of them.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is now that it's a fait accompli and it's done and they've made the law, you almost think, why would you bother with the committee afterwards? Why are you going to give this issue more oxygen if you're the NDP? What are they thinking? I mean, everyone knows that the fig leaf of consultation is just a fig leaf. So why bother with the charade? Why insult people's intelligence? Now, if you're on a committee, you get more money, but that's hardly reason to justify a committee that, the end result is already, it's not even predetermined, it's already law.
Well, here's two things to think about on that. Number one, there might be a statutory requirement that they thought they had evaded and then turned out it didn't, so maybe they have to have the committee. But the second, and probably more likely, is maybe there's other nefarious things they want to do to this act. Just because you've altered an act recently doesn't mean you can't do it again. And it's entirely possible. If I were, I do wonder if there will be, one of the reasons they brought in the $10 fee was to stop people from filing a lot of requests. And really it came down to two, essentially, groups. The BC Liberal Party, as the official opposition, which, by the way, the NDP used to do the same thing to the BC Liberals when their government, and Bob Maclean, independent reporter. Again, I submit to you, I don't know why those two get singled out. FOI requests should be kept private as to who the requester is. Sure, you could try to discern who it is, but you shouldn't be able to outright confirm, as the minister has, which I still find very questionable and wonder why the commissioner doesn't push back on that. Nonetheless, I wonder if this committee is looking for punitive options for those two overfilers in their minds. Because you got to remember, John Horgan himself said, Bob Macken's requests and the opposition Liberals' requests are not valid requests. They're stupid, they're useless, they want my cell phone screenshots, all these different things. So if your mindset as a government is, well, these requests are out of line and unfair, what do you usually do when you're a government and you think things are out of line, unfair, and not in the spirit of that? You find ways to punish it, you bring in fines, things like that. So that would be my deep, dark conspiracy theory and concern, is that this is an excuse to find other ways to sharpen that act when they should be doing the opposite. And again, we should, by name, cite Murray Rankin, who was one of the authors of the original act in the 90s, one of the very few great NDP accomplishments from that 90s era was the Freedom of Information Act, which was at the time a model for Canada, for the provinces. He's now an MLA and a cabinet minister for the Horgan government, and he sits there quiet as a church mouse, except in little inside baseball newsletters during very busy news days. Where are the Murray Rankins in that caucus who are going to push for taxpayers' rights and the public's right to know? They just don't seem to exist anymore.
They are very quiet. And not to give Rob too much love on today's show, but, an adequate amount of love. Let's also talk about his piece from, I believe, yesterday. Pay parking is returning to, I guess, some, not all, hospitals in BC. This is something that was famously removed during the COVID-19 pandemic. And also, as Rob points out, was vociferously promoted by the NDP party. I know that's NDP party. I'm trying to differentiate between that and the government. Their party convention it was a motion that was almost universally adopted. They want to get rid of paid parking in hospitals, and Adrian Dix, the health minister, dragged his feet up until the beginning of the pandemic. That's now coming back. Not everyone's happy about this, Jordan.
Well, I think this is foolish policy in that it blankets a number of hospitals without looking at the individual site concerns. So, okay, they're worried about Vancouver General Hospital, and, my office is across the street, literally across the street here from Surrey Memorial Hospital. Pay parking all around Surrey Memorial Hospital. So, if there was free parking at the hospital, one could go park there and walk to the other businesses. Okay, there could be an argument there for those ones, sure. Mm-hmm. The problem is places like Langley. Langley Memorial Hospital is in the middle of a residential neighborhood where all the other parking is free. There is a small fire hall up the street. Parking there for the public is free. There is a small Shoppers Drug Mart anchored mall up the street. Parking there is free. Across Fraser Highway, there is several municipal lands. All the parking there is free and was being used so much that the township had to come and actually install a long black wrought iron fence running down the middle of Fraser Highway to stop jaywalkers from trying to evade the pay parking. So clearly in Langley, you don't need pay parking. There's maybe 5 sites in all of Langley total that have pay parking, and none of them are near this hospital. And so, you sit there and you go, what's the point of this? All you're doing is pissing off the neighbors. And full disclosure, I was one for 5 or 6 years. We lived near the hospital around the time my second kid was born. And, people would evade the pay parking by parking in the neighborhood and walking in. Well, first of all, there's the moral thing. Fees, very high. If you have a loved one in care, you should be able to go and visit them as much as you want without having to worry about paying thousands of dollars a month in parking charges. I think we all get that. Number 2, it is all about that locational context. No, there's no real transit option to Langley Hospital, for example. There's no concern about pushing parking into other areas. In fact, the pay parking is the worst part.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's a one-size-fits-all solution for a problem that just doesn't exist in much of the province. And in the article, they talk about, some people were using it as free parking for a park and ride to transit, which, as you say, fair argument. Definitely something you can look at in a major metro center. But, the hospital where I had my appendix out a long time ago, don't worry, Saanich Peninsula Regional Hospital, sounds like your hospital in Langley. There's nothing around it within walking distance. There's no reason that anyone would just leave their car there that doesn't have to be at the hospital. And so, mandating they have to have paid parking is just well, why?
Yeah.
Just because a solution works for downtown Vancouver, it's not at all apparent that makes sense in Sydney, 100 Mile House, Langley, and so on.
Yeah, and look, the Liberals aren't blameless in this. They came in on their watch, and I think healthcare is always looking for revenue.
Yep, absolutely.
But again, a big chunk of that revenue goes just to policing those lots. Pay parking is an expensive thing to police. So it's not like they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars from these parking fees. Probably just the opposite. Probably small on the margin amounts for a place like Langley. So it's frustrating. I think it's tone deaf. I think it should be done site by site. And frankly, I think municipal council should be consulted on it. They know that area best. They know their parking policies best. And again, in a place like Langley, where off the top of my head, I can only think of maybe 2 other pay parking lots in all of Langley. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Some news tomorrow, and we're kind of guesstimating here, Jordan, but it is widely speculated that tomorrow interest rates are going to go up. The Bank of Canada I think it's pretty safe to say this is going to happen. It'll be done. They'll say it'll be done to stop inflation, which it probably will. But it's a double-edged sword, Jordan, because raising interest rates makes borrowing money to buy a home, a condo, an apartment, a house, more expensive and therefore more difficult to do. You will qualify, you listener, not you, Jordan, will qualify for less of a mortgage if you're borrowing, the day after tomorrow as opposed to today. I don't think I can put it any better than that. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's like one of those Star Trek episodes where you're stuck in that loop, that feedback loop, and it's over and over and over and over and over again. Right now, inflation is eating into our ability to afford things, so including houses. So they raise interest rates to try to bring inflation down, which, by the way, it's not going to solve inflation. Let's be clear. Labor shortages, supply chain issues, these are energy costs, these are driving taxes, these are driving costs up in a way that have to be reflected in inflation for prices. But you raise interest rates, and what you're going to do, you're going to erode affordability for home buyers again. So you're just stuck in this constant loop around and around and around and around. This has been a long time coming. Like, I remember, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when we moved into our house. We gave a lot of thought to getting the fixed income, fixed interest rate, because, it sounded like they would go up soon. Frankly, by keeping it floating, we've saved, thousands and thousands of dollars. We made the right bet there. But, who knows going forward what that'll be like. So all sorts of implications to this. But yeah, if you're making a major purchase and you're watching us, do it today, close today, don't do it tomorrow. Because the prime rate's going to go up and the interest rates will follow quickly after.
Yes. And it's very easy to just close and buy a house in
just
one
like
day
that.
in BC.
Just like that. Yeah.
Just
drive
like
up.
that. Just
slap the money down now. Get on with it.
Honey, honey, you were thinking about getting a house. I think we should do it now, today.
Yeah, exactly. Spur of the moment. Go save yourself some dollars. It does show the bind the government in general is in. They've got to do something. They can't have inflation rates at 5.5% like it was at last month. Like, you can't constantly see those prices go up. But at the same time, interest rates are, one countermeasure to that. But another countermeasure is to it, Maclean? Not taxing the bejesus out of everything. Also, not layering red tape and slowing permits. I worry when I read things like, Canada is expected to be the worst performing developed economy in the world over the next 10 years. Not, number 5 or 10, not like the worst of the G8 or G7, but like the worst developed economy, like of the 50 or 60 so-called developed economies, we're going to be the worst performing. Bothers me when I look at, OECD, World Bank reports that show that, we're the 64th, it takes Canada the 64th longest to process a simple building permit. Those are all costs that get embedded into the system and caused by government and slow processes. There's a lot government can do. Also, control your spending. I know that Trudeau loves shoveling money off the back of the truck. He leads from the heart outwards. The budget will take care of itself. None of that is panning out here. At some point, we're going to need some responsible fiscal plans. And if it's not in the next year or 2 or 3, we're going to end up to another Paul Martin type mid-90s budget crunch where you either do it or Canada becomes a have-not nation.
I mean, whether you're in favor or not in favor of stimulus spending, it's not even really in debate that it also leads to inflation. That's just basic economic theory. And again, you could still be in favor of stimulus spending and saying, well, it's still worth it. But like, you should know that is one of the side effects. It is the more you spend, the more prices will go up. There's more money out there chasing the same goods. So yeah, a lot of money has been, you might argue, artificially injected into the economy the last couple of years. Again, not saying that's bad, but of course there was going to be inflation.
Yeah, it's so hard, right? Like the NDP a couple elections ago made the wild promise they're going to give renters $400 rebates or something every year. They still haven't brought it in, years later. And they probably never will because they know what will happen. If you bring in a rebate for $400 for renters, rents will go up $400, right? Like, and so these are the problems. You inject more money into that part of the economy, prices get more expensive because there's more demand. It has been eye-opening to see David Eby suddenly join the supply side of the housing argument. This is a guy who once claimed it was all because of money launderers, and it turns out probably wasn't money laundering driving up housing costs after all. Like we're in a rapid period of housing costs going through the roof right now. And I'm sure David Eby would say that money laundering has, by and large, been curtailed under his watchful eye. So, not quite sure, but welcome to the supply side of the argument, Mr. Eby. It's been a long time for you to get here. Now let's see you actually do it.
The math is just hard to argue with. I mean, things like money laundering and house flipping and all these things, of course they can have a compounding effect. But for years and years and years and years now in BC, we have been building substantially fewer units, sometimes by an order of magnitude, than people are moving into the province every single year. It's really easy math. And yes, that doesn't mean you can't also talk about things like money laundering, sure. But the core problem is still that basic math. There are more people moving here than we build new homes. It really is that simple, at least to get to the core problem.
Yeah, look, there's lots of people who have concerns about development in their neighborhoods. Some people call them NIMBYs. I don't generally believe, I actually don't think that. I think generally, folks want more housing. They have concerns when it's up close to them, perhaps. But we have to get to this point where, we have to get more supply and different kinds of supply into the market. Why is Vancouver still so slow to approve non-strata row homes? Shared wall agreements work in all parts of the world, including Langley. I lived in a non-strata row home for 8 years. These models work and brings more density into neighborhoods, but not in a way that it's 20-story towers. Mm-hmm. There needs to be more options like that, and finding a way to process these permits quicker.
Yeah.
This is the great challenge for government. Eby, it's interesting to see Eby's comments because he talks a lot like, former housing minister Rich Coleman talked, like Christy Clark once talked about wanting to take on municipalities and hardwire zoning and get rid of a bunch of the public, not get rid of the public process, but kind of short circuit the public process, to be honest, in order to build more housing. Use the stick on jurisdictions that don't put in enough density, but that's all talk right now. And you have municipal elections in October. The last thing David Eby wants to be is some sort of drag on NDP candidates in municipal elections because he's going to need friendly mayors. You can only have so many fights with jurisdictions before people start going, wait a minute, you're fighting with every municipality? Maybe the problem isn't the municipalities, maybe the problem is you. So, and every premier and minister likes to go to the Union of BC Municipalities and get pats on the back and big applause, and you don't get it by, telling mayors and councils how to do their job. So it'll be interesting to see. My suspicion is Eby takes most of this year to kind of craft some changes to how housing happens, but he doesn't dare utter a word about how that might happen until after the municipal elections.
I think that's probably true. He does not. David Eby and the provincial government in general, not just specifically him, do not want to be a municipal election issue. And so I think you're quite right. And they have been hinting that these are changes they're looking at. So it won't be a huge surprise coming out of left field, no pun intended. But I mean, you're right. I don't see them putting themselves front and center during municipal elections across the province. It would be, not only would it be inappropriate, it would be a bad idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You don't want to be in the middle of that. And like, people are always looking for reasons to get out and vote. And yeah, you don't want to be the reason if you're the BC NDP.
Yeah. But I mean, the short end is, yes, supply, biggest issue. Let's get moving on that.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting moving, Jordan, the clock is ticking. In just a couple of weeks, the longest ever BC Liberal leadership campaign, through no fault of their own, will come to an end. And every week during the show, when we're not doing debate recaps, you've been telling us what you've been hearing, the scuttlebutt behind the scenes. It's probably more interesting than ever now that it really is the home stretch and people are making their final pitches to voters to, not just be their first choice, but second, third, fourth, fifth even.
Can you do the perfect ballot? Can your vote count in every round? Gavin Dew tweeted out.
Gavin, I want to think about that.
Yeah, see post first. Gavin tweeted out. Gavin Dew, Canada, of course, tweeted out today that this was the 300th day of his campaign. 300 days.
That's insane. That's American.
I almost wept. Like, can you imagine? He's been having to do this for 300 days, and he still has 11 left. Saturday the 5th. Okay, so if you're a BC Liberal member, make sure you've registered for your PIN number. It's not enough just to be a member. You actually have to take the second step and register and get your PIN. So do that right away. What are we hearing behind the scenes? Can I name drop for a second?
Of course, you can always name drop.
Friend of the show and frankly, a broadcast legend, a hero of ours, Bill Good and I were talking on the phone the other day. That's right. I talked to Bill Good.
There'll be no living with Jordan for the rest of the show.
It was great. And first of all, he was very complimentary of the show Maclean. And I told him it was just a very, very, very bad ripoff of Cutting Edge of the Ledge, without the smart people. And he was gracious enough to poo-poo that suggestion. So I appreciated that. But we're trying to lay out sort of, like Bill Good's covered how many leadership races on both sides of the aisle, and so we're trying to kind of flesh out how that preferential ballot will actually work, how it affects voter thought process, especially given the fact that a lot of party members are a lot more politically savvy than just the general public. Like, they think about it more. If you join a party, generally you're thinking about these kind of political machinations more. So you think about how your first, second, third votes go. And you think about what messages you want to send to the party in general. Because, there are candidates down ballot who most don't think have a legitimate chance to win. The consensus is it's either Falcon or Ross. And if anyone else wins, it'll be a huge surprise. I mean, a monumental surprise. Not to say it can't happen, because Lord knows.
It has happened before.
Aaron O'Toole, Andrew Scheer, Andrew Wilkinson. It happens more often than not. Stéphane Dion. It happens more often than not, I suppose. But the general sense is Falcon is in a stronger position than frontrunner Diane Watts was 5 years ago. That's true. I mean, Diane on that first ballot was around 30%, which was nowhere near what she needed in order to get over the top. Kevin's got to be in the 40s, probably around 45% on that first ballot. And the consensus is his team is working hard and is closing in on those targets. But then we talk about, right? Like, so, does a Renee Merrifield bubble up a little bit because, people want to send a message about having more, really strong women in politics? Does a Michael Lee, how does Michael Lee's kind of interactions, he's been the most critical of the party, frankly, decisions, regarding decisions and during this campaign. So, how does that play out? And so there's all these interesting layers to it. And in the end, it just comes down to, 40,000 members who will click their ballot and decide one by one who they want to see. Again, everyone I talk to says it's Falcon or Ross, and that people are very surprised at the inroads Ross is making in the urban areas. And I see he was in Delta again. He's been working those areas very hard.
You're right. I mean, there was a piece this morning, I think, it was Keith Baldry, and basically the premise was, can Kevin Falcon be stopped? And not in a negative way, just like he seems a prohibitive favorite. But I mean, I remember this would be the late 2000s. I was working in Calgary for the Calgary Herald, and we were covering a Alberta PC leadership debate, and we were doing a live segment online, and we were assessing all the many candidates, and there was like 10. And of one of them, I said something to the effect of, perform well tonight, but not even their family thinks they're going to win this. They're just here to raise their profile. That person was Ed Stelmach and became the next premier. And in a similar way, you mentioned Andrew Wilkinson and Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer. And Stelmach came up kind of the same way. He was almost nobody's first choice, but became kind of a down the middle, everyone can live with him kind of candidate. And these things do happen. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen in a couple weeks with the BC Liberals, but with a ranked ballot in which nobody has polled party members, if you're supporting Kevin Falcon, who's your second choice, or vice versa, any sort of combination there, it's so hard to tell. Yes, we have an indicator who has sold the most new memberships, and that is a useful thing to know, and obviously a good thing for that campaign. But unless there's been some informal polling of existing members, I'm not aware of it. And also, again, we don't know how people are going to vote in their second and third choices, which is a long way of saying, yes, I agree. It certainly looks like Kevin Falcon or Alice Ross will win, but these surprises are far from unknown.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And talking to the other campaigns, all of them think they're in third. They all think they're in that third place, and in that kind of, seat to pick up other, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh votes and move up. So it's interesting. I'll tell you, the tactics now are very much old school get out the vote tactics with twists. Michael Lee, so I get a phone call last night around dinner time, my cell phone, and it's a British Columbia number. So I do what everyone does when you see a number you don't recognize, you flush it to voicemail. And almost instantly, I had a text message in my inbox saying, sorry, missed you when we called, but this is the Michael Lee campaign, and kind of an automated message like, do you support Michael Lee? Text back yes if you do, or stop if you don't want these notifications anymore. So clearly he's going out there and doing their kind of reach out to members and trying to gauge what support they have. But yeah, we're seeing that more and more. The Falcon campaign's been doing text messages. I'm not sure if I've gotten a text message from the Ross campaign yet, but I'm sure it's on its way. It's a very sophisticated campaign.
It's in the mail.
Yeah, exactly. See, I know people. They text. I'm on a first name basis with all the robots of all the campaigns, texting and getting out the vote.
And we'll know, it's February 5th, which is not this coming Saturday, but the one after. So we'll have one more hot stove in between now and D-Day, I guess we could call it. And I mean, you're right. To go back to your original point, 300 days. That is just a punishing amount of time. And we understand the reasons why. It's been a pandemic, and the party was hoping that it could have an in-person convention to end things, which I still think was the right call. But, man.
When do you think the date would have could have been to have an in-person convention? Like another month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now? Like it is amazing that they pushed this thing out almost a year, and it still wasn't enough time. Like that's.
Well, yeah.
It shows how innocent and hopeful we were about COVID at one point.
Well, if you told them, a year ago or whenever it was that, okay, by February 2022, and I had to look to see the year, the vast majority of the province will not only be double vaxxed, but will be, well into getting third round boosters. Do you feel safe having an in-person convention? Oh, of course. It'll be in the rearview mirror by then.
Yeah, it's. I'm going to start to cry here. It's not great. It's not great. Maclean, should we talk about future Denver Broncos star Aaron Rodgers?
Oh yes, no. And speaking of name dropping and friend of the show, our good friend Sam Oliphant texted me a whole pile of things to beat you over the head with about Aaron Rodgers.
Number one, Sam Oliphant is a Detroit Lions fan.
Yes,
so let's just get one thing straight here. That's a team that went 0-16 not so long ago, hasn't been in the playoffs in 30,000 years, never won a Super Bowl. It is completely irrelevant to the conversation.
Actually true.
So call me Sam Oliphant when you guys actually make a playoffs. Then we can start to talk about other things. Because in the meantime, we'll sit with our 13 world championships and 4 Super Bowls and say, what? Detroit Lions fan? Detroit Lions are so bad that they once put out on Twitter that they had an undefeated preseason, that they were 4-0 in preseason, and they were bragging about it. So shut up, Sam. You too, Zubik. I'll take no nonsense from Detroit Lions fans or Chicago Bears fans on this. At least the Packers are in every year. We find new and inventive ways to implode on special teams to make sure we don't go to deep in playoffs.
Having said all that,
nope,
I'm going to tell you, because he did research. He did actual research.
No, he did not. Sam Oliphant has never done research a day in his life. And what he should be researching is where are they going to get a quarterback, because it wasn't Tim Boyle or Jared Goff throwing ducks all over the place. They haven't been good since. I feel a little bad for Sam Oliphant. He's probably one of those bandwagon Barry Sanders fans who got sucked in by the very brief period of mediocrity that Detroit had.
He's a Michigan guy, so that's I know he cheers for Michigan State, so he comes by it honestly. But this did blow my mind. Aaron Rodgers' team has only won 2 or more games in the postseason twice, including the year he won the Super Bowl. He's gone 0-1 4 times and 1-1 5 times, and he's gone winless in the playoffs more times than Matthew Stafford.
He's been in the. I bet you Aaron Rodgers has been in the playoffs more as one person than the Detroit Lions have been as a franchise in 50 friggin' years. Research that stat, Oliphant. Let's see that one. Let's see that one. I got salty with Zubik, too, on Twitter. I'm just not going to take any nonsense from Detroit fans on anything. Give me a break. Detroit, the saddest. I know what it's like to be if you're still with us and you don't know anything about football, just be comforted. They are the saddest sack franchise in the NFL, and that's saying a lot because the Jacksonville Jaguars are a thing.
Yes, true. And I apologize in advance to those of you who don't care about sports. It's just sat through 5 minutes of invective. And it's going to undermine my tagline, but I'm going to say it anyway. Until next week, he's Jordan Bateman. I'm Maclean K. And yes, happy politics.